Hello, and with those tragic pictures, we welcome you to World Talks here on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Children, as some of the most vulnerable groups in any society, enjoy special protection under international humanitarian law. Yet we continue to see them killed and injured in areas far from the front lines, including in areas with zero military targets. So said Patrick Thompson, Amnesty International's Ukraine researcher. Amnesty International is only one of many charitable, private and governmental organizations which have been instrumental in protecting Ukrainian citizens since Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine. How has the EU fared in this global effort to help civilian casualties? Well, not very well, according to Josep Borrell, the EU's High Representative for Foreign Affairs. Mr. Borrell has said EU countries must speed up the decision-making process to support Ukraine, which has previously taken, quote, too long. What should the EU do to up its game? Well, to discuss this, we are joined by Veronika Poniscjakova. She's Deputy Director at the Portsmouth Military Education Team. Veronika, welcome to TVP World. Thanks for taking the time.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good morning, a pleasure. Now, what do you make of Joseph Borrell's words? What does he mean?
Well, I would start that, first of all, the European Union, they have contributed a lot. They have provided lots of aid to Ukraine, humanitarian aid, military assistance, also helped refugees. So I do think that the Union has gone above and beyond of what was expected of them, especially given that Ukraine is not a member of the Union just yet. And they have provided unprecedented aid totaling over 120 billion euros. So they have done a lot. Having said that, what they have done, perhaps they have not done it as quickly as they should have. So this is what he was alluding to, that, for example, the current package of aid, ammunition, being delivered to Ukraine, that is way past the date it should have been delivered, and there has been several months delay.
Well, okay, so let's just for a second separate the two. So in terms of aid for refugees and civilians who've been injured in Ukraine as a result of Russian acts of war, certainly no one can dispute that the European Union and many other organizations and countries have come together to support these people. However, we have seen fractures, have we not, in the level of support, the quantity of support, the speed of support that's been given. Take Poland, for example, which was very quick, and other countries in the region, very quick to open its doors and to establish facilities for refugees here. But other countries, not so much. It's taken a lot longer. Does this surprise you? I mean, the European Union surely cannot act as a unified whole when it comes to decisions such as those.
Oh, absolutely. European Union as an idea is absolutely great. And the fact that everyone has an equal vote when it comes to making decisions, that is also good. Having said that, that can pose many challenges, as we have, for example, seen with Hungarian presidency of as well, and also, for example, blocking aid, and again, this can pose some significant challenges. Also, to your earlier points about not everyone stepping equally, that is absolutely very correct. And also, this is very much government dependent. If you, for example, look at Slovakia, the government that was in power when the war started, they were really quick to help Ukraine. They provided their S-300 air defense system, also welcome refugees. But the current government that is in power, only in the past couple of months, as late and also most recently this week, we had a Slovak representative going to Moscow and talking about negotiated peace and apologizing on behalf of the European Union to Russia. So that is absolutely unacceptable.
Indeed. Now, let's talk about the military aspect. Military aid also has been quite spotty in terms of what Europe has provided to Ukraine. Some countries have been better and faster and more cohesive in their response in terms of providing military aid than others. Hungary, for example, doesn't want to provide any whatsoever, whereas the UK, France, different aspect. Now, how would you assess that? And is there any way that we can improve these countries' responses? Because people are dying on the front lines in Ukraine every day. They can't wait. The war doesn't stop while bureaucrats make decisions.
So it is really hard. So on one hand, I think we have to acknowledge that some states, they have really given a lot. As you mentioned, the United Kingdom has been really good in this regard. At the same time, all these states, they have to make sure they do not compromise their own national security. So they can give stuff to Ukraine, but at the same time, they have to keep enough for themselves to be able to protect themselves should, for example, a threat from Russia come, and should they be threatened by Russia directly. At the same time, there are some states that, as you said, they have not contributed to Ukraine at all, and they do have reserves. They could easily give to Ukraine, for example, Spain. They really could do that easily. But also, we could say that Europe, not just European Union, but Europe as a whole, as a bloc, they do not have as many reserves as, for example, the United States. And I think this can be an issue going forward, given the upcoming presidency of Donald Trump. Arguably, Biden is now doing what he can, and this is what he has been doing in the past couple of months, giving that equipment from their reserves and giving that to Ukraine. But they may not be able to do that, or they are not going to be willing to do that after January.
Well, I was going to ask, what do you think Trump's response is going to be, or decisions? What do you think those decisions are going to be when he comes into power in January?
Well, Donald Trump is quite unpredictable, so it is really hard to tell what he's going to do. Let me start with an example. When he assumed presidency the first time around, he was very skeptical of NATO, and I think that skepticism is still here even now. But when he became president the first time around, he did not see the value of NATO at all, and he didn't know how it functioned. But he did change his mind over time, and he became more committed to the alliance. So I think we have to distinguish between Donald Trump as someone who genuinely enjoys running for president, and he will tell anything to his supporters to be elected, and Donald Trump versus president who is actually in power. So he may be influenced by people who will surround him once he assumes presidency. So I would say it is hard to predict his behavior.
Difficult to predict, certainly, but one thing that we do know for sure is that Trump has asked all NATO countries to contribute a minimum of 2% of their GDP, which many are still not doing, and he's been saying this since before he was elected in 2016. And he's simply saying the same thing now. That's consistent, is it not?
It is, and he's not the first U.S. president to say that. Barack Obama, George W. Bush, both of them complained about the free rider problem within NATO. And they do have a point. Everyone who is member of NATO, they should be spending 2% of their GDP on defense. And that is quite fair. But yeah, there are still so many states that do not meet the quota. And here we should once again acknowledge that actually this number used to be so much worse. There were two spikes in defense spending across the alliance, first time in 2014 in response to Russia's annexation of Crimea, and 2 years ago when Russia invaded Ukraine once again. So despite these two blatant violations of international law and direct threats to NATO, some states are still not meeting the required minimum.
Is that a sign that European leaders should step up? I mean, we've got a meeting of foreign ministers from 6 major European countries that's being held in Warsaw today, in fact. Is it time for them to get together and say, yep, let's step up our investment in our military complex?
Oh, absolutely. I think, with the exception of Poland, perhaps, no one in NATO or European Union, no one is really thinking about the future, and that there is need to brace for potential confrontation with Russia. And so many states, their militaries are just not prepared to be involved in a war. For example, look at the UK. There have been defense cuts in the past couple of decades. There's not enough personnel. So all states in Europe, they should be arming up and be ready to respond to any kind of confrontation.
We'll certainly be keeping everyone informed of the outcomes of this meeting. Veronika Poniscjakova, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Have a good day.
My pleasure.
And that's all from us on this episode of World Talks. Goodbye.